So thank you for coming back to join us for another episode of Spiritual Teachers. With me today is one of my dear friends, who I consider a brother, Igor Galibov. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Galibov, yeah.
yeah. So he's an
How's it going,
amazing
Peter?
spiritual teacher. He has continues to lead meditations, put out meditations, teach about so many various aspects of spirituality, including energy fields and working with the energy fields. He's traveled to Egypt. He's been all over the world in these sacred sites. And it's such an honor to have you here with me today, brother. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter, for having me here. Yeah, definitely. This, spiritual journey is a expansive experience. Never ends, and it's always a playful playground. You never know what you're gonna come up with or where you're gonna end up when you're allowing the higher guidance to guide you through these beautiful spaces between the spaces of reality, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. So I I know that you've studied the Kabbalah, right? Very intently. So let's just start with that. Maybe go over what it is, how you came to about to find it, and expand from there.
Yeah, actually, I started off with energy work. It was like a very sharp awakening in 2004, and I was able to see and feel energy and tap into pretty much anything. But I had all the gifts, but no wisdom.
Mm,
So I was like a kid in the playground, but there was no wisdom of how to harness this energy. And so I spent about 4 years in meditation and traveling to different dimensions, working with different beings, entities, solar systems, extraterrestrials, ascended masters, angels, spirits, healing modalities. Like I just went into all of it blindly.
hmm
In 2004, 2008, there was not much on the internet. There wasn't much anything on the internet, you know? So it was
hmm
like, okay, hit or miss, trial and error. And that was my whole experience with spirituality. There was no communities, you know, like there is now. So during that time period, it was okay, let's do what I can do and see what happens and just continuously experience and kind of just go with the flow of it, intuitively being guided.
hmm Like an experiment, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and so what, so eventually that led you to the Kabbalah, right?
Not really. I got into Kabbalah was um, intuitively, I tapped into another lifetime where that information started to come down for me, kind of just integrating it. I never really studied Kabbalah, but I understood the concept and the energetics of it and the codes of it.
Okay.
Because Kabbalah to me is basically a blueprint, another blueprint of a spiritual expression in this reality. So I started to tap into it because my oversoul has become self-realized through that process. And so for me, it was like, okay, this is like natural wisdom that I can tap into. Kabbalah is very deep and very has a lot of intellect into it.
hmm hmm
So for me, it was more of intuitive side and just tapping into the energies and see where it takes me and what really happens.
hmm
So that's what I kind of started to explore things. But for me, it was more of the understanding of the energy bodies, the understanding the emotional body, the mental body, the astral body, the causal body, the galactic body, how they all operate, how does it all connect to the soul and the oversoul, how do we merge this 5D into this reality?
hmm
So that was the main thing for me. And I spent about 10 years in different dimensions exploring them, constantly
Okay.
doing trial and error. You know, we go up in vibration. It feels amazing. It feels great. And then all of a sudden you fall down in vibration. It was like, okay, what do I do? How do I rebuild myself? So I
hmm
started to kind of experiment and I started to play with energy. I started to do healings and just randomly, like on the streets, you know?
hmm
And then after a certain period of time, I was like, wait a minute, I think I need to teach.
Okay.
And people that I was friends with that would come to my free meditations, they asked me to teach. And I was like, I don't know how to teach, but you ask me a question, I'm just channeling.
Hmm.
You ask me information, I'm just giving it, you know?
Hmm.
And it was very complex to create a structure to teach because you're always in this etheric space where you just go with the flow.
Hmm.
So I had to reconstruct my blueprint of perception in order to align and be able to kind of have some sort of a syllabus, some sort
Right.
of information for people. They're like, well, what are we going to learn? I was like, I have no clue.
Right.
Well, what are you going to be teaching? I have no idea. Just we're going to show up and see what brings us, right?
Hmm.
So that was my way of doing things. And then with time, I started to create structures
Okay.
for people because people needed structures. Be like, okay, come, we're gonna have a meditation. Well, what is the meditation on? They want to know. I was like, I don't know. We're just gonna come together and see what brings us.
Hmm.
So I kind of had to ground myself and present this information in a more logical way because the
Okay.
higher levels, there's no logic, right?
Right.
In the higher realms, we can build a house just starting from the roof and then end up with the foundation.
The doorknob.
Exactly. And the physical reality, it's opposite. We have to have a foundation. We have to follow the 3D reality laws of creation in order to manifest things from this higher dimension into here.
Hmm.
So that was one of the things I started to teach myself. I was like, okay, how do I do this? Because I spent 4 years in meditation. Like I did not care about this physical reality at all.
Hmm.
Like at all. I just wanted to be in my heart space. I wanted to be up in the other dimensions. Physical reality, I disconnected. I wasn't able to relate to people.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like, okay, I need to come back here. Otherwise, I could have just been spirit and just stay there. And
Yeah, well,
Kabbalah started to come through.
can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that? Like what were the practices and what was some of the things that brought you back like after those 4 years?
Going up in vibration and perceiving everything from the soul level, everything is beautiful.
Hmm.
But when you come back down and you open your eyes, the personality has judgment.
Right.
It starts to separate things. This is spiritual. This is not spiritual. This is good. This is not good. This is what the higher self says. This is what the lower self says. All those are construct of the personality that even speaks for the higher self. The higher self does not have that separation. It looks at it as an experience. It observes it and it says, okay, I choose this or I choose that. This is where our free will comes in.
Right.
So I had to restructure myself and my belief systems that money is bad, drinking coffee is bad.
Hmm.
It's not bad. I just choose not to vibrationally. That's all.
Right.
You know? So it was like working with that because when I started to work with that and unify things, that's when I started to love my life. That's when I started to
Mm.
enjoy this physical reality and walk around without judgment of separation and saying eating meat is bad. This vegetable is good or bad. It's like, no, 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 no. Everything serves its purpose. It's just what are you choosing to experience?
Right.
So I
Right.
started to shift myself in that. And that's when I started to kind of feel the higher self energies integrate into the physical reality. So there
Hmm.
was no longer a separation. I feel good in meditation only. I feel good in this reality as well,
Hmm.
as the same as I am in a meditative state.
Right. Right.
And we go through these stages of evolution in our spiritual awakening. And
Hmm.
we start to feel good about things when we're in a meditative state. Then we start to come into different realities of like transcendental spaces where we're in complete space of love. Then we start coming into the Zen moments, and all those different experiences kind of shift as we integrate them and become a better version of a human being. The whole purpose of all of this is to become the better human being. We take a look at Jesus, Buddha, they all had their own sufferings.
Oh yeah.
They were not like perfect. You can't because this world is powered of duality and finding the neutrality in it.
Yeah,
Jesus
and I
had his sufferings, Buddha had his sufferings,
oh yeah.
but still they found neutrality in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what it sounds like is like you went into those higher realms and then there was a moment where you started to ground all that back into this reality, right?
Yeah. It took me
Oh,
time. It
Yeah.
didn't happen overnight. It was like, okay, working on myself every day. I
Hmm.
was spending 16 to 18 hours a day in meditation. There
Wow.
was nothing in this world that was very interesting to me at all.
Hmm.
For me, it was interesting to work with other dimensional beings, traveling to different planets. I
Hmm.
would astral project more than I did anything in the physical reality.
Oh, wow.
So then it was like, okay, I need to come back here.
Uh-huh.
I need
Okay,
to
so
create here.
what was it? Like what was the moment? Was it your family that was like, "Hey, we need you back?" What was it? Do you remember something that happened that really brought you back to like being like, "Okay, I'm ready to step back into this reality."
Yeah, it was like at one point I was like sitting and meditating, wishing like a piece of gold brick would fall on my lap, right?
Hmm.
And I'll like meditate and try to create all these alchemical shifts and to happen. And then one day I started to talk to my guides and I said, "Do you guys have money up there?" Like, no, we don't even understand that concept. That is a part of the
Mm,
3D reality that you chose to experience. That's where money comes in. So that is your responsibility of the physical aspect, but the spiritual aspect for us is to for you to integrate that here. I was like, wait a minute, then why are you guys telling me to do this and that? And that's when I decided to, okay, I need to start focusing on how to create abundance. I want to start being part of this world. And I started to realize if we want to change something in this world, we got to be able to dive into the systems that we want to change. There will be nothing that will be destroyed because a lot of times people, the financial system is going to collapse. It's not going to collapse. It's going to shift. And how is it going to shift? By the spiritual community being involved in that system and shifting it from the inside.
right,
Transformation happens from the within.
right.
So when we shift our inner journey, it starts to reflect on the outer world. So the
Hmm.
financial system, if we want to change it, we have to become part of it and infuse it from within. So not to separate ourselves from it, but become of it and then guide it towards the more of a heavenly approach, towards a spiritual approach, towards a harmonious approach of how you utilize this money in a positive way. Because money is what? It's emotion.
Right.
You have it, you start to worry that you're going to lose it. You don't have it, you worry that you need it, you know? So you have to find that disconnect of non-attachment of ownership of it. And when
Hmm.
that happens, now you're approaching something without an attachment or an end result desire from the personality, but of service. And that's when you start to accumulate abundance because now you're working towards a purpose of serving others and allowing them to create abundance as well as you are.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there's like a whole different approach towards from the higher perspective of what emotion is than what we perceive it from here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of cultures, uh, I know in China, they believe it's like the water element, right? Money,
Mhm.
where it's like,
Emotion.
right, where they say it's like a river and it's like we can flow in the river, and we can like build a raft in order to go down the river, but don't try to grab it too much because it'll flow right through your fingers, you know?
100%. And you said water element, right? And water element is our second center, which is in Taoism is chi,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that energy needs to be built up and that energy needs to be utilized in such a way that it's harmonized with the heart space. So therefore,
Right.
we need to have intuition and intellect working simultaneously.
Right.
So for me, it was like, okay, I have the intuition part, but I also need to integrate the wisdom, the financial system, let's say. How does it operate? How does it work?
Mm-hmm.
There's no separation. This is the world I chose to exist in. So therefore, I need to understand what the collective is working with and how to utilize the system in order to grow my spiritual expansion
Okay.
with it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I started to like, okay, work with that. And one thing that I really, really found was very powerful manifestation part is one thing that we manifest for things. First thing we should always manifest for is connection to our higher self.
Mm-hmm.
connection to our soul, to our spirit, the wholeness, the perfection that we are as a monadic self,
Like
that
listening
I
and
am
being able to
present self.
hear it, right?
Yeah, because then the divine will guide you with desires of the higher self, not the
Hmm.
desires of the personality of what we see
And
on
the
the
ego.
TV
Yeah.
or social
Uh-huh.
media, right? Because
Yeah.
social media gets us very involved with stuff. It's like, wow, this person has this car, I want it too.
Hmm.
But maybe the universe doesn't want you to have this car. It wants you to have something even greater,
Right.
you know? So we have to kind of know what's needed for us. And once we do know what's needed for us and what's in alignment for us, manifestation will happen instantaneously. Then you don't have to work for it. You just have to act upon it.
Right.
And that was
Absolutely.
one of the things that I saw was very powerful was that in the meditative states, I would see what's needed, the end result, and then I would create an energetic path for that
Hmm.
and take the action that I needed in the physical. Because meditation in the physical is the acting upon it. One thing is meditating, the other part is acting. So, meditating, I would say, is more magnetic,
Hmm.
right? Is the feminine, she attracts, and electric is more action, the masculine.
Hmm.
So we have to take that electrical step forward to get that power, that lightning to flow through the aspects that we want to create or manifest into this reality.
Hmm.
So it's very important to have a balance of those two,
Yeah.
because a lot of times what we do, we sit in meditation and we try to visualize it, but we don't take the proper action towards it.
Yeah. So my question is, you're creating this energetic pathway, right? And so, can you kind of guide us through an experience of that? Like for me, I know that there's different blocks that I've put up with different beliefs, right?
Yeah,
And so I go through, and sometimes I don't even know what those blocks are until I'm in a situation where those blocks are like so clear and make me feel uncomfortable in my body. Like let's say an example of that would be like one of my friends wanted to buy me dinner one night that was expensive, right? And like I just felt so uncomfortable with that because I was like, oh man, I should have made more to be able to pay for that or whatever. And then I realized, oh wow, okay, these are some big blocks in me that are limiting me from receiving this abundance in this moment from a friend who has that right now, and is willing to provide for that. So in those situations, then I go and I dive into it on my own in meditation and in that self-awareness, right? And start to replace those beliefs with actually what I want to be attracting.
exactly. So when you said that, you felt it in your body, which is very important because, this body is the processor of information.
Hmm.
See, everything is in our field. Everything is in our electromagnetic field or in our ether, I would actually call it, because electromagnetic field can still be measured, but ether cannot be measured because ether is the spirit, is the soul. So there's programs within it, and the body is the processor. So if somebody was giving you money and you had resistance to receive it, right away we know that, okay, I'm having resistance
Right.
to receive that abundance. And where does that feel stiff? Where does that feel in the body? And that's where I actually would focus on, because everything that we want to manifest or attract to ourselves has to flow through the nervous system, through the veins, through the blood, through the tissue
The
of this
myofascia.
physical body. Exactly.
Hmm.
Through the bones. So where do you feel the blocks? Where is that energy not flowing through? Because what happens, it comes from the toroidal field in, right?
Right.
So it's like somebody's giving you. So it's
Like an
coming
apple.
in. Exactly. So when it comes in, I actually have this always here as an example, because
Ah,
the field, right? And you're
uh-huh.
in the center of that field. So wherever you're magnetizing, how does it really work? What is really happening internally? Is it collapsing inwards or is it open to receive?
Mm.
So when you feel your body, you'll feel the tension because you're not really open to receive what's being given to you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
by the universe. And people around us are the example of the universe. and
Right.
situations, right? It's the universe itself interacting with itself.
Mirror.
And
Everything's a mirror.
exactly, and a perfect reflection. So
Hmm.
one of the things we always have to look at and say, okay, do not, it's so easy for us to attach ourselves to the pain and suffering, but
Hmm.
to become an observer. And when we become an observer of ourselves with a gentle smile at it, it becomes so much easier to recognize what we need to shift within ourselves.
Like a curiosity, right? Like just
Yeah,
looking at things like, oh, okay, why is that happening? Instead of like, oh, that's wrong, that's bad, right? Like that was a
yeah,
huge shift for me. Like when I realized that and started just being,
yeah,
because not that many people talk about that, right? Like they don't talk about shifting it to a curiosity. They say be the observer, right? All these spiritual teachers just say observe yourself, right? But you can observe and have judgment, right? You can observe and have, oh, that's wrong. I shouldn't be doing that, right? And like, and there, what, 5, 10 years ago, I had all that playing in my mind, right? All these beliefs, all these um, programs that society and other people had instilled in me. Some of them were hereditary, right? Passed down by my family down to me.
yeah,
Some of them were cultural, right? Like being from a Russian background, there's all these cultural aspects that come in from that. And then I had to just sit in it and understand what was mine and what wasn't. Majority of it wasn't mine, like a huge majority, right?
yeah.
And then I had to just like a broom, right? Like take the broom out and sweep away all the stuff that wasn't, and then take out something brand new and sprinkle some fairy dust, into what I really wanted. And yeah, so did you go through a process like that as well?
Definitely went through the process of decoding myself, and I still
Hmm.
do it every day. It's like it
Yeah.
never ends, the whole process. The more you grow, the more different scenarios you're presented in life in order to unlock yourself. So these key codes that are within our DNA, it all comes down to our mother and father. The
Oh yeah.
major ones comes down everything to our mother, father. Then we have, from different ages that we pick up other things. So it's basically saying, okay, this is what I choose to experience, and this is what I choose not to experience. And that process doesn't stop, which
Oh
is
yeah.
really amazing. And you're like, okay, you go through one process, you kind of basically master it. You're like, okay, I'm done.
Right.
That I came to enlightenment. I feel great. A week later, again, another scenario comes up. You're
Uh-huh.
like, okay. But with time, you become better and the swing becomes less. So
Right.
for you to shift becomes so much easier and faster. Instead of waiting a couple of weeks or months or years, now you're shifting within days or minutes or seconds, because now you are able to become the observer and shift the perspective, because now you learn. It's basically learning how to utilize the tools. And yeah, it's really an amazing aspect of this spiritual path that we look at, but it's also an aspect of becoming the better human.
Hmm.
It is becoming the human that observes things or sees things through love, compassion, understanding, and wisdom. Because every single person in this world, what do they need? What do they
Love.
want?
Love.
Everybody wants to be seen, recognized, nurtured, loved,
Hmm.
accepted. And if we provide that to every single person, we are right away step into this illuminated state, and all our problems start to kind of just sprinkle away, and that's it. So we're like, okay, if we get ourselves into that state every day, then we're good. I feel like this is what the collective needs, is that recognition of light and love. It's easy to say, I understand, but we something that we do have to work through. And it's part of our nervous system, it's part of our uh, everyday reality, where we need to constantly remind ourselves these things.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think you're spot on with all that. And one thing I really realized is like, I had that huge drop into like deep depression before my awakening, right? And now there are moments of lows, right? Like, but
Yeah.
they don't go so low, right? Like, and the more I raise my vibration, it starts to look like this, right? Like it starts to the low every time there's a low, there's a little bit higher of a high, and it,
Yeah.
it it keeps moving up, so it's easier to bounce back, and I don't need to go down back into dark those dark moments, those depressed times, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that I learned what I needed to from there. Went down into the roots of hell, if you will, right? To sprout a tree all the way up to heaven. And it's all the same spectrum, but we get to choose. We get to choose if we suffer, and we get to choose, like you were saying, you get to choose to wake up, and we have a choice, right? We can choose to continue to evolve, and continue to grow and expand. And that brought up a really interesting scenario that happened for me last week, actually, with this person that I know. And this person said to me, I was kind of into spirituality for a little bit. And then I realized I don't want to associate with anything that has to do with religion. And so for me, that was a really interesting perspective, because it's very different, right? Spirituality is like the ocean, and religion can be like a goldfish bowl, you know? And it there's boxes around it. There's things that are wrong. There's things that aren't gonna help the soul necessarily expand. There's a lot of amazing experiences people have from religion in so many
Yeah.
ways. I've had amazing experiences with Jesus, and with Ganesha and Krishna and all these different deities and gods and goddesses. But what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is like it's so much more expansive than that, and it is connected to that growth and expansion of the vibration.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. It's part of the whole process. I mean, religion served its purpose before spirituality. That's the only way people understood how to get to spirituality. So everything serves its purpose. Maybe the time for it has come to shift, but the main core things that we can get out of the Bible, the Torah, the Krishnas and Ganeshas, they all serve a purpose and a reminder to us. They're just aspects of ourselves. And if that did not exist, maybe we'd not even have spirituality because all of it sprawled out from those old texts. Because
Absolutely.
what is it? It's basically somebody else's spiritual experience put in a book, you know?
Right.
And if you take a look, and I just was in Egypt. If we take a look at Osiris, okay,
Hmm.
take a look at Jesus, we take a look at Krishna, they all have the same story. Every single one of them was able to resurrect themselves. Every single one of them had the same story. They did not have a father, but they had a stepfather. So very, very similar stories that I go throughout times. I don't know if these are stories about these beings or these stories are about a certain collective consciousness that is taking process within each individual in their lifetime.
Hmm.
We take a look, we see certain numerology, certain numbers that play out very similar, and each one of them has the same mission. And if we take a look at Egypt, the Egyptians always were focused after life, and everything had to do with the astral plane. So my teachings, where they come in, is to how to become aware of the field.
Mm.
Because in this body, there's nothing in the body. It only processes what's in the field. If energy creates matter, why are we trying to change matter? We should
Right.
focus on energy. This is why they're called energy bodies. This is your body, and you have energy bodies.
Hmm.
And each energy body is part of you. Our energy field expands 50 feet in each direction. If it expands 50 feet in each direction, that means that we are only aware of 10% of ourselves. So if everything just processes through, We can tap into our thoughts, our beliefs. They're like little spheres floating around. That's where our thoughts come from. They don't come from our mind. So if
Mhm.
they come from this field, and we get into the meditative states and we become aware of the field, the energy around us, we can shift it and change it. We can become the masters because that's what they were. They were healers. They were aware of times and dimensions. They perceived the future. They were oracles.
Mhm.
So they operated beyond the physical realms of what we know. So that means vibrationally, the earth was at a higher space of consciousness.
Mhm.
And we as people are headed towards that direction. And to head towards that direction is to become aware. And when you bring awareness, awareness is transformation. It's
Right.
naturally transforms because consciousness just needs awareness in order to become alive. And what happens is
Yeah.
because we are not aware of it, the energy becomes stagnant, the ether becomes stagnant, and we create energetic blocks. And these
Mm.
energetic blocks then become illnesses in our body because we're not aware. We go through an everyday reality. We go to stores, events, gatherings. There's always an exchange of energy. Do you get a moment to sit with yourself? 15 minutes is only the beginning to tap into the field. But if we get the moment and to really sit with ourselves and understand the endocrine system, the chakra systems, now I'm not talking about just the seven chakra systems. I'm talking about the chakra systems in the field and
Mhm.
not the nadis in the field because the emotional body has its own chakra systems. The mental body has its own chakra systems in the field. And how do they operate? How do they communicate? How does that relate to our physical body? And how do we shift it and change it and activate it in order to expand our awareness and start to perceive the astral plane? Because once we start to tap into that astral plane or the spirit realm, now we can become aware of what happens before it becomes an issue or a problem within the physical body. So the obstacles will become much more noticeable because of the awareness. Through the process, we can shift our reality and choose what we're going to have instead of tripping and falling all the time.
Right. Yeah, this is a really interesting perspective. So basically to summarize and correct me if I'm wrong, basically in meditation, when you go when you go into those deeper states, right, which from what you mentioned takes at least 15 minutes to get into the field, and then from there you need more time. For some people, it may take longer, or
Mhm.
shorter, depending on how advanced they are, right? Um, so when they're in that, when they're aware of that field, then they can tune in and recognize what energies may be trying to affect their physical body, because it all starts in the energy bodies, and it has to be clear. It can be cleared from the energy bodies before it gets to the physical body, and but it always starts in the energy bodies, right?
Correct. Because the mind directs the energy.
Right.
Yeah. So the heart sends the energy. So if the mind directs the energy, then that means our thought process creates all everything around us. So the world is mind. Each chakra system has its own mind. So the whole purpose is for us to change the belief system is only just one step.
Right.
So this body is so complex, right? The
Oh yeah.
organs, how it all operates, and still doctors are trying to figure out how wonderful this machine is. But can you imagine tapping into the energy bodies? They are even more complex and they are multidimensional. When you tap into a chakra system or a template in the energy body and you start to heal it or transform it and activate it, it might take you to another parallel reality of your past or future lives that we call it, which also has a resonance to this dimension. So now you are tapping into not only the toroidal field here, but you're
Hmm.
tapping into the toroidal field that your soul is experiencing in other dimensions as well. Now you're becoming a multidimensional being and you're becoming aware of patterns that are repeating themselves from the causal body, the cause of your existence.
Hmm.
And once you start to tap into those levels, that's when you start to really formulate and create the power in this lifetime to really master it. So these things have to be done through a conscious approach. One thing is when we do things through outside sources, like paraphernalias or anything like that, or like different substances, which
Mm-hmm.
is okay, right? But then there's also has to be a conscious part of you that you are sitting with yourself and you are able to go through the whole process, because the body and the mind will do everything in its power to distract you. A lot of times we sit in meditation, we're like, okay, you look at the phone, you're like, no, 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 let me go back. And then you're like, I need to do this. And the
Mm-hmm.
mind will distract you. And the whole thing is like, how do you get the mind to be at a place where you want it to be instead of allowing the monkey mind constantly to run around, which is his job. It's supposed
Mm-hmm.
to do that,
Yeah.
but it's supposed to go where you guide it. So that is one of part of the, I think, is very important trainings that we must train the mind, because it's a muscle, and through meditative states, it's like we learn how to sit with ourselves, because through the meditation, naturally discomforts and pain and suffering and memories will come up,
Oh
because
yeah.
that's what consciousness does. It goes backwards in time, starts to present everything to you. And if we learn how to see and feel through the heart, then the things will naturally start to transform themselves. What it is like fragments start coming back to you. And because you're not resisting, or you're just allowing yourself to be, it starts to kind of come back into you. So you're bringing back your aspects. And those little dark spots that we see within ourselves, they're actually parts that have separated from ourselves. So we have to learn how to move that energy and go beyond the pain and the suffering, separate ourselves from that aspect. Okay, I don't feel comfortable right now. When you say that, that is where actually the deep transformation is coming. And if you just wait a few more seconds, you'll be like, wow, my body just shifted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember sitting so much in meditation. I didn't do any sports or any yoga or anything. Just in the meditative state, the spine would naturally adjust itself and
Mm.
raise that vibration, because everything will start to put itself into the proper geometrical shape, where it naturally belongs, based on the frequency vibration that you experience. And there was times where like I cannot sit anymore, my hips are hurting or my legs are falling asleep, and I'd be like, no, you know what? I'm gonna just sit here. I'm gonna go against that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit, and all of a sudden you get into this trance, and boom, it shifts. It shifts, and you can feel your hip snap like you've
Oh
moved or
wow.
something. And it will snap into its position because you have shifted the energetics that created that matter. And this is where we have to have patience. And what is patience? Patience is love.
Mm-hmm.
And when we
Yep.
have patience for ourselves, the body and the geometry of it will naturally adjust.
Well, see, this is really an interesting concept because um, my dad right now he's studying with this enlightened woman from Australia, and this is what she teaches. This is a Tibetan teaching where you
Mhm.
all she says is just sit with your pain, just sit in it and allow. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to figure out where it's coming from. Just sit with it until it subsides. And uh, this is such a deep teaching because very few people get to that place that you're talking about because of that lack of patience, and very few people allow their body to click in and to align, and so this is a fascinating concept because logically it doesn't make sense, you know?
Well, the whole thing is logically nothing makes sense,
Right,
because the
right.
higher dimensional logic is not of the physical mind logic. And that's the whole thing, is that we have to learn how to surrender the logic of the mind, because everything that we learn in life, we have to de-learn it. We have to forget about it. So we have to go backwards. And the thing is that the mind wants to be in control, because we're taught that pain is bad. But pain and suffering, in that state, nobody tells you go and burn your hand. But in that state, when you're sitting with yourself, you have to learn how to separate that pain body. Okay, that pain body, once you go beyond it and just kind of find a way to dissolve yourself into the void, it will naturally shift. And there are certain tools and certain ways of focusing on certain things that really help us. because everything comes down into the gland system, because the glands are the chakras.
Hmm.
So if we understand how they operate and how this physiological structure operates, and we learn how to sit with it, it will shift because there's no awareness. We're not taught this stuff from childhood. This is what we should be taught from childhood. If we
Right.
taught this from childhood, then it becomes so much easier, you know?
Right.
So this is something that very big. We need to have a proper education in order to understand the physiological aspect of the body as well as the spiritual aspect, because now you're learning the body, not just one aspect of the body. We're learning energy, bodies, and the body because it's part of the whole. And this is something that in the ancient texts, they talk about this. You know, you go to Egypt, you go to India, Tibet, they know this wisdom, but this wisdom requires a strong diligence and a determined mind that is really interested exploring these aspects. If you're just gonna hear this video and listen to it, okay, that's great. But now if you put it into action and practice, and you give yourself a proper timing, because we work with the energy of the moon and the sun and understand the cycles, and you do it for those certain amount of cycles every day diligently, you have no other choice but to be enlightened. That is the natural state of consciousness of mankind.
Hmm.
But we spend a lot of time 9 to 5 working. Okay. But you also need to spend the time with yourself. It's a must. We brush our teeth every day. If you didn't brush your teeth, spiritual hygiene is needed. We must sit with ourselves at least an hour or two a day. And if we can find the time, and I know people say, I have kids or I have this, I have that, get up earlier.
Right.
Find the time for
Yeah.
it.
I mean,
I have
yeah.
kids, and trust me, I know they wake up at 6, I would wake up at 4. If I knew they're gonna wake up earlier, I'm gonna wake up even earlier. I know they
Hmm.
go to bed at that time, I will go to bed right after that, and I'll start doing my work as well. So I would find my timing according to the environment I'm in.
Hmm.
It's important because now the universe says, wow, you are actually dedicated. You're dedicated to service of your own soul. That's the number one we have thing that we need to do. If we cannot be service to ourselves, we cannot help our kids, our loved ones, no one, because you think you're helping them, but you're actually coming from the personality that is forcing something upon them, and then it backfires. But if you really come from the space of your awareness and divine intuition, you're like, okay, I need to step back or I need to step forward, and you will know what needs to be done and where and how. And I think it's very important to understand these concepts. That's why in my teachings, I very focus a lot on the physical body and then the energy bodies
Hmm.
and nothing else, because a lot of people want to connect to the extraterrestrials, want to connect to this and that. That's all great. We can connect, but if the body and the mind and the spirit is in coherence, okay, then we have clarity how to and when to communicate with who.
Right.
Because a lot
Right.
of times people do open up portals and gateways and they start talking to other dimensional beings without having a pure understanding of what is it that they're channeling. And that aspect I feel is very important because I did a lot of channelings in my own time. If you go to my YouTube channels, there's a lot of stuff that I've done, and it still comes back down. What have you done in this lifetime? This is where Kabbalah comes in.
Hmm.
Kabbalah says, what is important for the soul and the oversoul? Why are you here?
Right.
And that's what's important for somebody else or something else, because everything around us has its own agenda. You have your own agenda. I have my own agenda. Your mom, your dad, and everything else around us have its own agenda.
Hmm.
And the extraterrestrial beings have their own agenda as well.
Right. Yeah.
Eh? So, what is important for you in this lifetime for your soul to achieve? Because it wants to self realize. And when a being self realizes, he gives birth to a soul.
Mm.
And in Kabbalah is basically understanding the higher dimensions in this physical reality. It is integrating that aspect and doing the soul's path, what it wants to experience here.
Hmm.
So, which I really respect, because it does not say, oh, just go up into the meditative state and sit next to a tree and meditate your whole life and have one leaf a day. No, no,
Hmm.
no. It makes you become active part of this reality. It has included and fused astrology and with the aspect of this physical reality and how to become the better human.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So the Kabbalah works with the tree of life, right?
Yeah.
And can you explain for people that are new to this how that works and what the different parts of the tree of life are?
Oh, that's a lot there to
Okay.
talk
Okay.
about. But it's Kabbalah, and the Sefer Torah is basically a blueprint of the soul in this dimension.
Okay. So it's just a general kind of like instruction booklet for the soul for every human, right?
For the human being to understand the aspects that they need to improve within themselves. It
Okay.
all comes back down again to these geometrical structures of the pyramid, okay, of integration of these different levels,
Hmm.
working with Ein Sof, and these type of energies,
Hmm.
understanding the Yod Hey Vav Hey, which is also the teachings of Yahshua and how he understood that as well. So there's so much involved in that whole dimension. It is the same thing as learning the nadis. Includes sound. It includes different wisdoms that are passed down from different timelines. And for me, when I tap into it, it's very can become confusing, but I feel like it's much more easy in a meditative state to be
Mm.
approached.
Okay. So
Yeah.
for those people that don't know what nadis are, can you explain those a little bit?
Nadis are basically energy points on the body, which is from the Hindu texts that we go to. And so we understand that the nadis are different energy points through the body, and that's how they operate. Kabbalah also has that, but it's a little bit different. It talks about the energy fields in the field as well as connected to the major ones, which is 21 sefirot, but it's actually 10, right? They say 10, but there's 11, there's 12. There's actually altogether 24, because there's three of them that they're really not spoke about. There are the invisible ones that go into higher dimensions. So there is a timeline of these structures that come together. And when these dimensions work together in coherence, it's all bringing down that light from the soul into this physical reality. If we take a look at the geometry of a physical body, we understand the hips, the shoulders, right? The mind, everything has to be balanced geometrically. When it's geometrically balanced, you are creating certain structure that allows energy to flow through the body. And when it flows through the body, that the soul says, okay, you opened yourself to receive these higher dimensions wisdom, which become part of you, and now you act upon them in this reality.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, and so with Kabbalah, some people associate it with Judaism, but they're separate, right?
Well, it's not separate because it's part of it. It kind of comes from that, right?
Right.
Because it comes from the mysticism of Judaism.
Okay. Okay. That's a
So
good way to
yeah,
say it. Yeah.
yeah, it's the mysticism, because see, in the Jewish tradition, they say, okay, you have to study the Torah, the Talmud before you get to Kabbalah. It's like basically at age of 40, they say, okay, you can start learning Kabbalah.
Okay.
Why? Because you get into the spiritual aspects of things, now you're going in a different level, which I understand their concept in a way, um, because they say you came to this earth to create.
Hmm.
So until age of 30 or 40, you're supposed to create a family, a work,
Mm.
environment, all of that. Create what you need to do on the physical reality.
Build
Now
your
you get into
foundation.
mysticism. Yeah. Now you
Hmm.
get into mysticism, because now all of that supports you to go higher dimensions, and you're no longer worried about creating money, a house, this, that. Now you dedicated yourself to service. You did your job as having kids. You did your job with your wife, with your work, with your family. So you have put everything into structure as a foundation, which I definitely understand from that perspective. But we're also moving into a time where all of that is merging into one.
Right.
It has to be done parallel.
Oh
So
yeah.
maybe during that time period, it served its purpose.
Hmm.
But now I feel like spirituality and existence of those two, it's part of it. Spirituality is everything. Waking up in the morning, brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, spending time with your kids, cooking. We have to learn how to have that peaceful approach towards everything.
Hmm. Hmm. So if somebody were to want to start learning the Kabbalah, what would you recommend? Where would they start?
There's a lot of information out there these days,
Hmm.
especially online. They can, I'm sure, Google it, look it up, YouTube it. But the thing is, wisdom, the information is great.
Hmm.
The only way to become it is by putting it into action. And
Like
I feel
actually
like
live it and
there's so
embody
much
it, right?
information these days. Yeah, they have to embody it is to put it into action.
Hmm.
And the practice is really dedicating yourself. It's not like doing something for 1 week and you're done. No, you have to be diligent in that. And I feel like anybody can achieve any of this stuff if you spend 6 to 8 hours, 4 to 6 hours, even a day, just towards those aspects. You have no other choice but to become enlightened.
Okay, so that brings up the next question. What does enlightenment look like to you? Because right now that term, there's so many different definitions. So how would you define it?
Floating in the air like Jesus. No, it's when we go through our awakening, we start to have images and visions that come in from another dimension, which is, yeah, it's beautiful to see this enlightened beings. But in the physical realms, enlightenment is becoming the best version of your human self. That is what to me,
Mhm,
being kind, understanding, compassionate, forgiving, loving, you know, having the divine perception towards things. That to me is enlightenment. You will create a natural auric field around you. People will feel it, people will sense it. It's not about that. It's about who you are and how you become a reflection to others as well. So that is to me is enlightenment because there is not going to be something that you are floating in the air and you're this perfect human. No, we are human beings having this beautiful experience on this planet. As we get older with age, we integrate that more and more and more. We shouldn't punish ourselves for that. We shouldn't be hard on ourselves. That's where I think that we deviate from these kind of things is to accept things. Nobody's telling you go do something bad, but accept things as they go. You know what's right, what's wrong. You know what you need to be doing. And I feel like improving ourselves as a human being, that is enlightenment.
I agree with all that. I just think there's one piece missing, which is awareness. Because there's a lot of really
Yeah.
good-hearted, kind people out there that don't have awareness. And because they
Yeah.
don't have the awareness, that's not allowing them to expand at a rate that they may be desiring to expand at.
Yeah. Awareness. So I would say two energies, the energy of the dove and the energy of the serpent.
Mm,
The serpent, which is Shakti, okay,
hmm.
or the Kundalini energy, is must because it allows us to see the truth in 3D reality. The
Hmm.
energy of the dove is wisdom, which allows us to see from the spiritual perspective, of the soul's perspective, of why integrals of light come together and interact. So,
Hmm.
those two energies, when we fully understand and balance them out within ourselves, that's when you actually will walk through earth and understand through this land that okay, where to step forward, where to step back, and when to act and when not to act.
Hmm.
So yeah, that awareness starts to come through, and I feel like the awareness is in the field because the field tells us a lot. You come up next to people and you feel so good next to them. You feel your heart open up and you're like, oh my God, it's so great. And there's
Hmm.
people that you feel a little bit of tension.
Hmm.
That's also okay. So why? because the awareness is there, so you're aware of things. And because the awareness is there, now you're choosing consciously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you are correct on that. Yes, awareness is very important.
Yeah, I think that's also a really powerful thing is like as a kid, I would feel all these energies, right? Like, but I didn't know what they were, what to do with it, how to interact with it. Like you said, if I was to be educated on this stuff, like if I knew what chakras were, even like if I knew that the endocrine organs are associated with the chakras, that they work as toroidal fields as a fractal of our larger toroidal field, which is a fractal of the planetary toroidal field of the
Yeah.
universal galactic, it's like it's all fractalized. And if I just knew some of these basics as a kid and understood how to navigate and what to do to connect to angels, to talk to angels, to differentiate those kind of things. Like there was intuitive things that I would do, like I would do Reiki on trees and animals and people as a kid, like that I practice now. And that was a big part of my awakening, finding Reiki, right? But there was some aspects that were extremely scary, right? Like having
Mhm.
spirits knocking on the inside of the closet, and watching The Sixth Sense was like I couldn't sleep in my room for 6 months because my like that was real. Like, to me, that was I was having those experiences and my parents were like, "Why are you so scared of it?" And I'm like, "This is happening to me in my room. Now there's a movie about it. Like, you're telling me that, I shouldn't be scared when you can't even give me an explanation about it, and so navigating all those things and then choosing to fall asleep at that time when I was in middle school because I didn't have any guidance, I didn't have any teachers, and then from there, eventually praying and like crying to Creator to show me the truth in my 20s, and then the rest is history. But it's yeah, I think the kids that are coming in now that are on the planet now and that are being birthed onto the planet, they're so just genetically and developmentally, they're so far ahead in so many ways. They have all these gifts and abilities that um I don't think that I had as a kid.
Yeah, the kids that are coming in definitely the energies of the sun have shifted a lot, and we can see that. So therefore, the souls that are coming through the energy of the sun are different,
Hmm.
more activated, more open. Um, I have three kids of myself, and I raised my oldest daughter telepathically until age of 3, completely telepathically. We would say, okay, put on the shoes telepathically. She would start putting on her shoes. Let's go for a walk.
Oh wow.
Bring me a fork, bring me a knife. She would do that. And I started to do that and play with kids. It's so much easier to have work with kids because they don't need explanation. They just receive the energy and they download it,
Hmm.
you know? So I started to work with kids, teaching them these kind of things. So I meditate with them and stuff like that. We play different games, energy games, and that opens up their intuition. My oldest daughter, I believe she was in second grade, she comes from school and says, Papa, I got an A, and throws her backpack. I was like, wonderful. What did you study for? She's like, I didn't. I asked my higher self for the answers. I'm
Ah.
like, wait a minute. I'm like, what do you mean you asked your higher self for the answers? I'm like, okay, that's a new generation of kids. I'm thinking to myself.
Uh-huh.
So 3 times she comes back like that. The fourth time she comes back again, she got an A. I'm like, wow, this is like already like she's like it's been already like a couple of weeks. She's been using this and it works for her classes. I'm like, this is amazing. She comes home on the fifth time. She throws her backpack all upset. It's like, I got a 54.
Oh
I like
God.
completely failed. She's like, it doesn't work. I said, well, okay, don't get upset. Let's find out why it didn't want to give you the answers.
Uh-huh.
She tunes in and she's like, it wants me to develop my brain.
Ah, okay.
All right. So he was like, okay, so let's try it again. Like, now you understand what you need to be doing.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot in involvement in there. I love that there's some beautiful schools where they teach kids blindfoldly to read.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of
Oh, that's
innovation, a
crazy.
lot of
So they're
creative
wearing
aspects that are coming.
blindfolds.
Yeah, they're wearing blindfolds and they're learning how to read with a blindfold. They're showing different toys, different objects, and they're able to see them with their astral mind, what is really happening and what's going on. I think
Oh,
having
wow.
this is the future of schools for kids, and if we can create something like that, that would be the amazing part where we can see the freedom and liberation of the new uh, CEOs and presidents and lawyers of this world operating from the higher dimension instead of operating from this lower dimension, instead of punishing people, understanding what's really going on in their field and how to improve them and how to heal them from these aspects. That is the future. But having people put into certain jails or something like that, you're not really healing anything or anyone. You're just creating more of that and adding more into the world. So having these types of different um, teachings for children and becoming the next generation who are becoming the leaders. Can you imagine? They're not going to be thinking with their pocket. They're going to be thinking with the higher mind of how to improve the collective consciousness of our earth
Hmm.
and the people.
Yeah, so what are those
Yeah.
schools? Do you know the names of the schools that teach the kids with the blindfolds?
I don't remember, tell you the truth.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but definitely I'll let you know. I'll look it up.
Okay. Okay. And then I can drop it underneath the YouTube if
Yeah.
when we get the link to that, because I know a lot of my friends that have kids would love to learn about that. That I haven't heard of that yet.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
definitely.
amazing. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah, so so speaking of kids, I recently about 2 months ago started working with in physical therapy, doing physical therapy with kids. And the majority of the kids that I see are autistic or Down syndrome, or have a hard time expressing verbally. And it's really interesting that you mentioned telepathy, right? Because my telepathic abilities have come online, especially during COVID. They were really strong. When I went on a trip through California, I was connecting with different, like I telepathically communicated with the Sasquatches up in Mount Shasta, and different beings up there, because everything's so open up there. It's considered
Yeah.
the root chakra of the earth, and everything was really easy for me to do like telepathically over there. And one of my theories and one of the things I believe is a lot of these kids that do have Down syndrome and autism, they just are holding that frequency of unconditional love. They're just kind of like angels in disguise,
Yeah.
and they're holding this vibration of love for the planet, and and so, and at the same time, I'm curious if you've had any downloads or any understanding about what their bigger purpose is here.
So to me, energetically, it's still an experience from the soul level that comes in. You
Hmm.
know, it's an experience that the soul wants to have. It doesn't have a judgment towards it. For us, it might not look what is normal, but they do operate in a different frequency. And if you do observe their mental patterns, they are operating differently than what we are, and they are teaching their parents to step out of the box of what they know, of what they are experiencing. So I used to work also with people that have dementia, and take a looking at that mindset. Dementia is very interesting to me because the people do not like what they experience in this world, so they create these different black holes within their mind to tap into a different dimension where they feel safe and secure.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I've worked with people with Alzheimer's and dementia for several
and
years.
you,
I
so
was
you
going to
know,
those
yeah,
clinics. They're super sensitive around the full moons. Like
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like
we all are.
all their demons come out on the full moon, you know? It's like a chaos, total chaos in the homes at that time.
Yeah. So
That's a whole nother topic, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you. What were you saying about the dementia dimensions?
yeah, that was pretty much it. I didn't want to jump into from to another topic, but where we were at. But I do feel for the time
Okay. Okay.
that we
Okay.
are.
Yeah, sounds good, man. I think we've covered a lot. I think it's been really amazing. And thank you so much for coming on, man. And
Not a problem, Peter.
I think there's so much more we can discuss, so maybe we could do a part two in the future.
Definitely, definitely, brother.
Okay. Well, thank you
Sending you
so
much
much,
love. Thank you, brother.
Igor. Yes, and I'll share any of the links for people to get in touch with your courses and meditations and
Oh yeah,
Instagram and
definitely.
anything like that.
Um, Yeah, I have a whole community online where people get to share their spiritual experiences. I have host free meditations every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern. So stuff Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I post meditations every actually week as well. So there's new meditations come out every week on YouTube. If people want to find me, they can see the link in igorgalibov.com or alignmentoflight.com.
Okay. Okay, amazing, man. So I'll drop all those links on the YouTube channel and then people can connect with you. So thank you so much
I got
again
it. Love you,
and
brother. Enjoy
lo
the rest of your day.
love you. You too. Thank you.